The April 17th meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council will now come to order. All stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Prior to the start of council meetings, we have the opportunity for citizens to address the council. Our council meetings are the first and third Tuesdays of the month, and this period of time for open podium is 6:30 to 6:55. If you wish to speak to the council at that time, please contact the city manager's office by noon of the date of the meeting, and that phone number is 949-8412, and we would like to get your name, the subject matter, and your phone number. If time permits, when scheduled speakers are done, we may open the floor to unscheduled speakers. This portion of the meeting is not recorded or televised, and if you have any questions about this, please contact the city manager's office. The first thing we have today is an Arbor Day proclamation, which we do every year. We've been a tree city for many, many years, and the Arbor Day proclamation is going to be renewed again. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees, whenever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas Eden Prairie has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways, now therefore I, Nancy Tira Lukens, Mayor of the City of Eden Prairie, do hereby proclaim May 5th, 2012 as Arbor Day in the City of Eden Prairie, and urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and to support our city's urban forestry program. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Adopted by the Eden Prairie City Council on April 17th, 2012. Do we need a formal motion of approval for that? Or is it?
No, you don't just.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I think that's the power of the mayor.
The power of the mayor, yeah. But I just would like to add that Eden Prairie has always been a strong promoter of forests and trees, and in fact our tree ordinance was a model for many of the communities in the Twin Cities area. We were one of the first to implement that. And also, for those of us on the council, we've all seen aerial maps of Eden Prairie from 1940, and in 1940 there weren't a whole lot of trees in Eden Prairie. It was a lot of farmlands, and if you look at an aerial map of Eden Prairie now, it's an urban forest. There are trees everywhere. It's really beautiful, so we're very proud of the efforts of previous councils and our councils to continue this effort. So thank you. Next, we have something very exciting. We are launching our new city website. It's been in the works for about a year, and we have Joyce Lorenz from our communications department that's going to talk to us about it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Today we are very excited to launch a new and improved city website, EdenPrairie.org. It's been about 7 years since the city website was last updated, and a lot has changed since then with how we communicate and engage with the public online. Our website traffic has steadily increased as we've implemented new online services. A few years ago, we had an average of 20,000 visitors to our website each month. Now we're close to an average of 40,000 visitors each month. We launched the City News email subscription service in 2008, and there are now more than 12,500 subscribers. A lot of research and planning went into the development of our new site, which included investigating the latest trends in website design and navigation and soliciting feedback from city employees and the public. The overwhelming suggestions we heard centered around usability and easily finding information. We also heard the desire for a city website that is reflective of Eden Prairie's brand and reputation, a city that we all know was named the best place to live in America in 2010. In addition, we wanted a Section 508 compliant site. Section 508 means a website is fully accessible to persons with disabilities. And the new website also had to be compatible with mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. And finally, we simply wanted a website that would help make all of our jobs more efficient. While we think we've achieved creating a cutting-edge website that provides information in a visually appealing, user-friendly way, we know there's always room for improvement. So we will continue responding to public and employee feedback to ensure this website remains fresh and that enhancements to online services are made as soon as they become available. I'd like to thank the members of my staff, Carrie Knoll, Katie Beal, and Sarah Mitchell, who have worked tirelessly on this project over the past 8 months, especially the project's leader, Carrie Knoll, who kept us all on task and ensured we did what was necessary to make today's launch happen. I'd also like to thank 2 key members of our IT staff who we've worked closely with on the project, Ryan Browning and Mike Hutter, and our website design vendor, Vision Internet. And thank you as well to the city's leaders who have been very supportive with our efforts and the council for approving the overall project. Now I will turn it over to Mayor Tara Lukens to unveil the new city website.
Thank you, Joyce, and thank you to the Communications Department. I know a lot of hard work went into this. Thank you to the staff members of every department, because I think everybody had a hand to some degree in the development of this new website. Employees got to see a sneak peek of this website last Thursday. There was a special launch event, and our own Wheel of Fortune host imposter, Ricky Sajak, I guess, led the employees in a fun game. Do you have any comments about that, Rick?
No, Mayor, other than the city manager. City manager has to wear many hats.
Many hats, yeah. Okay. Well, now it's my honor to officially launch the new website, EdenPrairie.org, same address, new website, with a brief video tour.
Design features, intuitive navigation, and user-friendly online tools which make it easy and convenient to find the information you're looking for. As you can see, the new EdenPrairie.org homepage features an inviting design which captures the spirit of the Eden Prairie community. Take a moment to browse through the photo slideshow using the navigational arrows on either side of the page. You might even spot someone you know. Next, you'll find an intuitive set of navigational drop-down menus. As you hover over each navigation item, you'll see a variety of topics appear in the drop-down menus. These will help you find information ranging from community events to volunteer opportunities. Once you locate your topic of interest, simply click and you'll be directed to a new page. Or try the new I Want To menu, which may be a more convenient way to find the information you're looking for. On the lower left side of the page, you'll find another set of menu options. Each of these buttons provides one-click access to some of the most frequently visited topics on the website, including Parks and Recreation and the Community Center. Finally, you'll want to browse through the most current news and events. Clicking on the name of any event or news title will bring you to more information. Clicking on Read More will take you to a full listing of news or to a full calendar of events. But that's not all. If you hover over the colorful buttons in the lower right corner, you'll find one-click links to a variety of news and information sources, including the city's Facebook page and a new section of the website dedicated to living green. And as you scroll to the top or bottom of the page, you'll find yet another set of one-click links to other popular topics, including employment opportunities and the Eden Prairie Liquor Store website. Now let's dig just a little deeper into some other exciting new features. As you navigate through any given topic, you'll see a menu of related articles along the left side of the page, which will help you find the specific information you're looking for. Once you find it, you can use the tools at the top of the article to change the font size, share the information with others, even post it to Facebook, or simply print the page. At any time, if you want to go back to a previous page, simply use the breadcrumbs to navigate backward. If you are unable to find the information you're looking for, or if you have additional questions, simply navigate back to the home page and use the one-click facts link to find a dynamic and searchable set of frequently asked questions by topic. If you have a specific question or comment, click on Contact Us and choose the most suitable category. Then complete the contact form and your message will be automatically routed to the appropriate city staff member. And finally, if you want to stay informed about the topics of your choice, subscribe here to receive customized email alerts. Now that you've seen just some of what the new City of Eden Prairie website has to offer, we hope you'll take some time to browse through the site and experience the ease of navigation and user-friendly online tools for yourself.
Thank you. It looks really good, and I'd like to encourage all the people in the audience and listening to check it out and provide feedback. Every single page apparently has a feedback button that you can hit, and please use it and let us be informed of how we can make that website even better and more useful to you. Any comments or questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Case.
I am really impressed. I just have a quick question. So, under amenities, if I click on the Frederick Miller Spring, which I'm doing, do you have plans to continue to tweak? And like, there's no picture there, which I'm not being critical of the one little. I'm just saying that as I go to these different places, are there options eventually to have everything being bettered and increased with photographs?
Absolutely. We are adding photos every day, so that one will be there soon.
Oh, well, that
Councilmember
doesn't have to be
Aho.
necessarily.
Councilmember Aho.
Well, in my line of work, I see a lot of websites, and I would have to compliment staff and the website team that you did a fantastic job. It really looks great. Navigation looks excellent, and really clean, sharp look. I really applaud you guys on doing a great job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, I like it. It seems to be a lot easier to find things. I have to agree with Ron, though, especially in the whole Parks Department or even the Environmental Learning Center. I would like to see pictures of everything on every page. Mm-hmm. We haven't had that before. And how long are you anticipating before, like, everything that you go to has a picture with it?
Well, we spent about the last month just trying to get it to this point so we could launch it. So now that we can breathe a little bit easier, we will start that process of adding the photos. We hired a local photography firm to take pictures for us starting last fall. And that's a lot of the pictures that you've seen on the website right now. And as they add to our library, we will continue adding those to the website.
And that being said, I just went in to rent a park facility, and you have pictures of every single place to rent, which is exactly it. So you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yes, I wanted to say that too. Really, really good job. And what I'm so impressed by is that you took all of this information, our values, what's important to us, green, activity, all the things that we are, and you brought them into focus on the website. How'd you do it? It's amazing, but I'm very, very impressed. So thank you for that good work.
Thank you. Lots of information there, lots of good pictures, a very rich website. well amenitized.
We learned a new word.
That's an inside joke from the workshop. Okay. As long as we're talking about website addresses and such, I'd like to bring up two different things. I've been contacted by Bill Neuendorf with Transit for Livable Communities, which is an organization that works to make sure that the Twin City area continues to be a very livable place by making sure we have bikeways and walkways and light rail and buses and all options for transit. And they are concerned about the bonding for light rail, for the Southwest Light Rail Corridor, and they're asking people to sign an online petition. There's some information at the information desk around the corner here, but you can also go to the website www.southwest, all written out, lrtnow.org, and sign their online petition. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, and I saw it right on the front page of our website, is the Mayor's Water Conservation Challenge. And my understanding is that in cities of our size, we are presently #1 in the Midwest. Yay. Wonderful. But it's not just the competition. The important thing is for people to go to mywaterpledge.com, and you have an opportunity to kind of look at some ways that you could improve the way that you live so that you can save money on water costs, energy costs, fuel costs, and not only save yourself money, but save the community money because the infrastructure that the city will need will be lessened if people conserve a little bit more. So hopefully people will go there and make that pledge. It's more of an educational project than it is a pledge that somebody's going to hold your hand to the fire to make sure that you do everything that you said. So is there a motion for approval of the agenda and other items of business?
Approval.
Second.
Any items to add?
Go ahead. You first.
Yes, Mr.
Under
Case.
council member reports, brief, some questions on traffic issues that I have already talked with Mr. Ellis about, but I'd like some clarification.
Okay. Mr. Getchell.
Mayor, yes, few items. One, public hearing. We need to add a public hearing tonight for a city application for a deed grant for a new business in the community. And we published notice for the public hearing, and it's actually been something that was placed in some previous Friday reports, but we didn't bring the item to the agenda until Goldenrod this evening. So that's the Goldenrod item about it's actually in support of a resolution authorizing an application for a state grant. This is similar to the Emerson grant, so this is a very positive thing. So that additional public hearing, and then also these aren't additions to the agenda. They're already on the agenda, but you've got a few new resolutions related to the Mitchell Road improvements. That's already on there. That's our first public hearing. And then under report of the city manager, I would just like to add a quick report and an update on the League of Minnesota Cities community conversations, if I could.
Okay, great, thank you. All in favor of the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the council workshop held Tuesday, March 20th?
Move approval.
Second.
Any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the council meeting held that same evening?
Move approval.
Second.
Any corrections to those? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Any items to question? Yes, Mr. Rosso.
Not to question, just to inform the council with respect to the amendment, the approval of the amended bylaws and articles of incorporation of the Eden Prairie Foundation. The bylaws made it into the packet. The articles did not. I had a chance this afternoon to get the amended articles, review them, and found them to be satisfactory and recommend the continued action by the council tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Nelson.
I do have a quick question. I don't want to pull it off exactly, but it says a police canine is surplus property. I take it a dog has aged. Yes. Doesn't seem like a canine dog should ever be exactly surplus property. So is there a one-sentence explanation?
We have a procedure under city code by which we dispose of property that we no longer need. So dispose is also not the word I'd care to use.
Doesn't sound,
But
we're not giving this dog to the pound, I assume.
No, we are not giving this dog to the pound. This dog is going to a good home. But in order for us to transfer the dog, we need to follow the statutory procedures. And perhaps the next time we do this, I'll be more creative with the words we use. It's just to follow the procedure under the ordinance.
Okay, but the dog's going to a good home and will live out the remainder of his more elderly life in a good situation.
That's right, and it's important, especially with property of this type of a dog, that it be placed appropriately, because it would be inappropriate to place it in a home that was not prepared to care for a dog that had been so trained.
Thank you.
All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Motion passes. Brings us to our first public hearing, Mitchell Road improvements. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First public hearing is for Mitchell Road improvements to occur south of Pioneer Trail to a point just north of Spring Road. And official notice of the public hearing was published in both the April 5th and April 12th editions of the Eden Prairie News. And individual owners received a copy of the notice, and a copy of the feasibility study was also sent to homeowners. We've prepared a feasibility study for this improvement project. Utility and street improvement project has been prepared, and there are affected property owners along the project which are being assessed the bulk of the cost of the improvement. The city's paying some of the cost of the improvement, but before we get into the public hearing, Mr. Ellis, Public Works Director, would like to provide a presentation and an overview of these road improvements prior to the public hearing.
Mr. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I do have an overhead that I would like to show to demonstrate the project area and some of the components of the project. On the overhead, there we go. This is a project roughly 1,500 feet in length. It is a section of Mitchell Road that is currently one of our worst streets in town as far as pavement condition index is concerned. So we're very happy to see that the adjacent property owners are ready to move forward with this improvement project. The components of the project will transform this roadway from a rural section road to an urbanized section. It will have curb and gutter. There will be trails, storm sewer. There are some utilities that will be installed with this project, and of course some turn lanes for traffic capacity. The project is just shy of an $800,000 project. As Rick had mentioned earlier, we have essentially three property owners that will be benefiting from this project. We have received a petition from the largest property owner, that being Grace Church. The other two property owners would be the City of Eden Prairie and the Metropolitan Airports Commission. The project, as I mentioned, is just shy of $800,000. Grace Church will be assessed at roughly 25% of the overall cost. The Metropolitan Airports Commission will be assessed 21% of the cost. Hennepin County has also contributed 9% of the cost, as this was previously Hennepin County roadway, is now a city jurisdictional roadway. And then, of course, the city is also a large property owner and will be contributing 45% of the cost. We have discussed this in quite some detail with Grace Church and Metropolitan Airports Commissions, and everybody is ready to move forward with the project, so we're eager to see it completed.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Ellis? Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, I just want, this is the first time the utilities have gone in along this road and upgraded them? So this is the initial time, or are they already there and this is being redone?
There are currently utilities within the roadway. Grace Church is already served by water and sewer, so they have no need for additional. We're actually doing some modification of our existing infrastructure, water and sewer, with this project, which really will benefit nobody but the city. And then Metropolitan Airports Commission will benefit from water and sewer, so they are paying for a portion of that as well. So really it's being shared by MAC and the city. The utilities will be.
Oh, the utilities part, but the road upgrade is an initial upgrade then?
Yes, and the previous developer's agreement contemplated what those improvements would be for Grace Church. We're following that developer's agreement, I believe, from perhaps 2005. And then through the feasibility study, we identified what benefit MAC receives from these improvements, and they're paying for those benefits.
Okay, so this isn't a road that has been in existence for 20 years, it's just being repaved then. So this is developer agreement and original.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? One thing you said caught my ear, and that was that 9% of this is going to be paid for by the county because it used to be a county road. Is that something that was negotiated when we agreed to take the road from the county, or are they just being gracious?
I'm assuming that would be the case. It predates me, but they are contributing over $70,000. My guess is through a road swap agreement or jurisdictional transfer.
Okay, so usually when we do a jurisdictional change, we protect ourselves for just this kind of situation, so things are covered? Okay, all right, thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this? Okay.
Seeing none.
Go ahead.
Nope. I would move that we close the public hearing and adopt a resolution ordering Mitchell Road Street Trail and utility improvements, and adopt a resolution approving plan and specifications for IC 11-5792 Mitchell Road Street Trail and utility improvements.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. The next item is the vacation of an easement for ponding, flowage, and drainage. Mr. Getchell.
Mayor and Council, thank you. Yes, this notice for this public hearing is published in the March 29th edition of the Eden Prairie News. This relates to our Notting Hill development that we recently approved, and the property owner within that development has requested a vacation of an easement that we have for ponding, flowage, and drainage that cuts through the entire development, which previously was a large one-parcel development, but now will be part of a 20-home subdivision. So we're asking that the easement be vacated, and then there'll be obviously new easements and ponds, and as actually you're already aware of this through the approval of the previous project as part of the new project, but this is vacating an old easement in association with the project.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Getchell? One question I have is, we approve this development. Why does it not come up at the time of approval? Why is there this time lag before they realize that there's easement that needs to be dealt with?
Mr. Ellis?
You know, quite honestly, I'm not sure if that was overlooked during that process, if maybe this was an easement that wasn't identified. I do know that there is no need for the city to maintain this easement,
okay.
And so we are in support of vacating that, and they will be creating new drainage easements with that development that will handle any future needs. So
that gets approved through your department.
That is correct.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. Anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on the vacation of this easement? Okay, is there a motion?
Seeing none, I would move to close the public hearing and adopt the resolution vacating an easement for ponding, flowage, and drainage purposes in the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 21, Township 116, Range 22, Hennepin County.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C, Flying Cloud Landfill Parcel Subdivision. Mr. Getchell.
Mayor and Council, yes, Flying Cloud Landfill Allied Waste, we have a request for a zoning district change from rural to I-2 on 12.4 acres and a preliminary plat of 263.2 acres into one lot and two outlots at 9813 Flying Cloud Drive. Notice of the hearing was in the April 5 Eden Prairie News and was sent to 100 property owners. In this case, Allied Waste, located near the landfill, is requesting a plat and a rezoning to transfer ownership of the landfill, excluding the operations that Allied has, to the MPCA. And then the proposed lot that they have is 24 acres for their business operation, which includes their office, their transfer station, and their hauling operation. And then that rezoning is consistent with designation for industrial use and with the guide plan. And the remainder then is the landfill, and there have been discussions about the MPCA acquisition of the property because ultimately the state is responsible for the remediation of the landfill. And while this action tonight is the first of several related to landfill remediation, and it starts with a parcel subdivision. We felt that both at the Planning Commission level and at the council level, we would take a total look at the project and the whole issue, meaning that keeping in mind that your action tonight is with the plat, but we actually have members of the MPCA here to provide a pretty extensive overview of their guidelines, their rules, what they operate under, and then the proposed plans for this landfill, of which you're going to hear about is work solely done within this landfill. It does not involve any transfer of waste from any other landfill, which is a previous discussion that was held here. And they are moving forward, which you'll hear about with work at other landfills and this landfill as well over the next, here at this landfill, over the next 2 to 3 years. So prior to the public hearing, they're here to provide a presentation on their project, and then we could conduct the public hearing as it relates to the parcel subdivision. But as I said, there are several actions that you'll hear about related to the work over the next several years. And I know that the MPCA is here then to provide that presentation, if we could turn it over to them.
So, Mr. Getchell, you're saying that this is just the plat division that we're dealing with today. Are you saying that there will be several actions in the future, meaning there will also be another opportunity for public hearings on specific portions of the remediation? Or is this the only public hearing?
No, there will be it even neighborhood meetings or open houses or public hearings related to the project as we get closer. That is correct.
Okay.
And I want to mention, it's both the zoning district change, the rezoning, and the plat.
Okay.
So those are the two land use issues.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want to come forward?
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. My name is Bill Griffith. I'm representing Wood Lake Sanitary Service, which is the underlying property owner and a related entity to Allied Waste. So just to keep the two buckets separate, Wood Lake Sanitary Service owns the entire property today and would transfer the balance of it to the MPCA. And then Allied Waste would continue its operations on the 24 acres, as the city manager indicated. I'm just giving a couple introductory remarks, and then I'll turn it over to the PCA. That way I don't have to circle back up unless you have questions. And so the company, although it owns the balance of the property, is not responsible. As the city manager indicated, the MPCA has been responsible since about 1995 under the binding agreement to close the landfill. So I wanted to make that clear. I don't think that was entirely clear at the Planning Commission, so I wanted to address that up front, that even though the property is held by Wood Lake Sanitary Service, it's under a binding agreement under the state's closed landfill program. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the operations would continue much as they are today, and so all of the applications that are related to this transfer, mainly the plat and the rezoning, are a technical requirement in order to allow the state to take ownership of the landfill and thus be able to bond for the and fund for the improvements. And so really much of what you see today will remain the same both at the Allied Waste site and on the landfill. Now there's a pretty significant improvement program that you're going to hear about tonight, but that is all confined within the landfill property. So we are here as the owner of the property to take questions following the PCA's presentation if there are any, and I would turn it over now to the PCA.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Newman. I'm with the Pollution Control Agency. Thank you for having me here tonight. I brought some help with me tonight. Doug Dale will be the gentleman on the left here. He's my supervisor, and he would answer questions that maybe have to do with funding or bonding or anything like that. The gentleman in the middle with the blue shirt on is he's the current engineer on this project for the remediation of the landfill property, of the landfill site. And then Peter Tiffany's on the end over there. He has been working on the landfill for several years and is pretty familiar with the history of the landfill and stuff like that. So and then I myself am the land manager. We're going to talk about, there are some requirements in the statute, in the closed landfill program statute, that requires some partnering between us and the planning commission, the planner, Mike Franz, and those people regarding the on and off-site contamination that's at the landfill. And we'll kind of talk about that in the presentation, if you want to. And you know, it's a terrible thing when your arms get shorter and shorter and you can't see these things anymore, so I'll have to put my glasses on here. Oh, there we go. Okay. We're talking about managing risk at the Flying Cloud landfill. And, I'm sorry, we got to do this, don't we? Let's go, big fella. Yeah, you guys are going to make it hard on me, you know that?
Just click again.
Huh?
Just click again off of that menu, and it should go away. Click in the, yeah, there you go.
There we go. Okay. We're going to sort of talk about the background first a little bit. That's the background of the closed landfill program, and then as well as the background of the landfill itself. Then we're going to go through the statutes that talk about land use planning activities at and around the landfill. The remedial action plan is really the construction that's being proposed at the landfill starting later this year sometime. And then we'll talk about long-term future plans at the landfill as well. I don't know how much you all know about the landfill or the landfill cleanup program. It was actually initiated in 1994. It's a unique program within the nation. It's an alternative to Superfund. It actually allows the state to take over the long-term care of about 112 landfills that were qualified for the program. We do things like monitoring of groundwater and gas at the landfills. We determine the risk that's associated with for residents around landfills. We build and maintain remedial systems, which is what we're going to kind of talk about here this evening. We maintain the landfill properties themselves, so we mow them, we fence them, we do all the kinds of things that are required. We have about 8,000 acres that we are responsible for. Of about 2,000 acres of that would be landfill fill area of waste footprint, and then the other 6,000 acres is generally property that's around a landfill. So if you think about the Flying Cloud landfill, it's about almost a 90-acre footprint, and it's about 250 acres, let's say, of property. So to give you an idea of, and then we usually partner with a local government unit on land use planning activities. For me, the Flying Cloud landfill is just simply one of the 112 landfills that we're responsible for. To give you an idea where these landfills are, they're scattered all over the state of Minnesota. I'll sort of tell you where my major concern for all my landfills are generally in the north part of the state and along the west boundary here. I only have 4 sites that are actually in the metro area. The rest of them are all outstate. So I get to travel a lot in God's country. As was mentioned earlier, a binding agreement was signed in 1995. In that binding agreement, BFI retained ownership of the landfill property itself, the 225-acre landfill. They also retained ownership of the gas rights. They were actually turning the landfill gas into energy at that time. And they maintained their business operations on that site as well. The agency then accepted the long-term care responsibility for that site. So we do all the monitoring, we do all the mowing, we do anything that was required to maintain the landfill over the long term, basically in perpetuity. One of the unique aspects of the closed landfill program is that pursuant to 115B412 subdivision 8, I get to own property. I don't think the Pollution Control Agency owns any other property other than what's in the closed landfill program. We own about 30 properties out of the 112 right now. We're probably taking ownership of another 12 or 15 sites as we speak. So as people decide that they want to give it to us or something like that, we take ownership of the property. Let's see. And then in 2010, BFI asked, or we started a dialogue about taking ownership of the landfill itself. and they said certainly they would do that, but it does require a parcel split because their business operations would have to be split from the rest of the property. Give you an idea of what we're talking about here. This is BFI's business operations over here, so that'll be sliced off. This is the city of Eden Prairie's property up here. This is called a MAC lease area, so it's actually a leased property up there, and then the rest of this property would revert to the state of would become part of the state of Minnesota's ownership. Okay. We will, this MAC lease area, we would like to take on, we would like to, it is a long-term lease right now that BFI has. We'd like to take on, we'd like to take over that lease as well. So, and it would fit very well with our ideas because we would not allow any kind of building or anything like that on the property. So it would dovetail fine with what MAC requires. The landfill was closed in 1988. There was a site-wide active gas system was installed in 1992 to capture the gas and flare it off, and like I said, use it for waste energy. Like I said, the landfill footprint is about 87 acres. It ranges anywhere from about 28 feet deep to almost 100 feet deep. It used to be an old gravel pit, so it has probably about 8 million cubic yards of waste in it. So it'll be there for quite a while. A couple of the problems that have happened with the landfill is differential waste settlement. As the organic material decomposes in the landfill, it differentially settles, causing pockets, holes in the cover, in the top of the landfill. That does cause a certain amount of ponding on top of the landfill. I don't know if there's anybody here from around the landfill, but you can look out over the landfill today, and it looks kind of like a washboard. It's kind of lumpy here and there. That's because of the differential settlement of the waste out there. One of the things we want to talk about is, I've sort of talked about active gas extraction systems. This is kind of a representation of an active gas extraction system. Basically what happens is the gas is sucked up these pipes. Landfill gas is very moist, it's very warm, it contains a lot of water, so it's sucked up these pipes here. It comes up into these top pieces up here, so it comes above ground, and then it goes, then it flows, then it's brought back down ground and run along these laterals here. What happens is when this moist gas gets into the cooler above ground area, it condenses, it causes condensate, so you have water. The water then either dribbles down here and flows down into a condensate tank and collected, or it dribbles back down into the landfill. But as you get differential settlement, what happens is these laterals begin to bow and bend because there's pressure on top of them kind of pushing them down, and eventually they will pinch off eventually. So the gas, so what's happening now is there's water forming in these little low areas here, so you're not getting as much gas flowing. And then also eventually they'll pinch off and you won't get any gas being sucked out of the landfill at all. The groundwater contamination at the landfill is improving, and partially that's because the active gas system tends to suck out the contaminants before they're able to be pushed down into the groundwater. But the gas issues do need to be addressed at the landfill. We are somewhat concerned about that, and it'll get worse over time. And the surface drainage is inadequate because of the sort of the differential settlement, the settling, the ponding that's occurring at the top. What you're having is water settles down there instead of running off, and it has an opportunity to dribble through the cover and into the waste.
How do you know the groundwater is improving because of the wells that have been?
Yeah, we have about 37, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but yeah, we have about 37 wells around the landfill. They are sampled quarterly, and then it is tracked over time it is trended over time to see what the contaminants are doing. We are going to sort of change gears right now. Like I said, one of the other unique aspects of the closed landfill program is land use planning. One of the requirements of the statute was that we, the agency, have to do land use planning on and around these landfills. We have to provide local government with information regarding these landfills. There are some actions you have to take as local government, and then there are some actions that you have to comply with. You have to just comply with my, or make your plan consistent with my plan. Okay? And we're going to go through that a little bit more right now, and that's really subdivision 4 for me, 115B, 412, subdivision 4, actually talks, it's the affected property notice, that's for me, not the way I talk, okay? And what it says basically is I have to provide local government, Eden Prairie, with maps showing groundwater contamination, and where the landfill gas is, where there are concerns about landfill gas around the landfill, and the narratives to sort of describe these problems. Eden Prairie would have gotten copies of these documents probably the end of last year, probably December, November, something like that. And then the agency can make recommendations and provide technical advice on how to address these issues. To give you, this is the groundwater area of concern map, and to sort of give you, and I know it's going to be hard to see, I'm real sorry about this, but the sort of the orange area, that's the waste footprint. You can't see it here, but there's a dotted line along here. That's actually what I call the land management area. That would be the permitted area. That's the area that Wood Lake Sanitation will give to the state of Minnesota. This then is BFI's business operations, and this is the city's property up here. And the green striped area is the groundwater plume. So the groundwater plume is generally going down towards the river. It's about 90 feet deep. You can see that the plume kind of goes about like this. So it's fairly extensive, but it pretty much goes along the river. We don't have too many concerns about people because everyone's on public water system here, so there is nobody that's going to be drilling into that groundwater, into that groundwater anytime soon. The blue cloud is what we call an area of concern, and the area of concern, in this case, it's not going to be a particular worrisome to anyone, but in theory, if there were no houses out here and somebody wanted to put a golf course out here and wanted to put a high-capacity well over here, their high-capacity well might draw that plume over sideways from the way the gradient goes right now, and that might exacerbate my problems of trying to control where the contamination is going. In this particular case, we don't have that problem because the groundwater's, because like I said, you guys are on public water system anyhow.
So when you say area of concern, you mean area of concern only as it pertains to someone drilling a well? Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
What other communities have done in a case like this would be, where there is an area of concern, would be, I know you guys have probably well ordinances, so you could drill into another, just make sure that someone would drill into another aquifer, and that would be sufficient to address that.
What's the difference between the green and blue areas of concern?
The green is the plume. That's where the contamination actually is. The plume, the blue would be if, like Brad Aho?
Councilmember Aho.
Okay. Councilmember Aho indicated, that would be if someone did something, let's say put a high-capacity well way out here or something like that, that would might tend to draw the plume in a direction that's not currently going.
Well, since that green area it goes over some residential areas, is there any concern for those residents?
No, it's 90 feet deep. It's at least 90 feet below those houses, first off. And since everyone's on public water system, I wouldn't be, I really don't, I don't see anyone putting a sand point in over there or anything that goes down 90 feet, so.
So that's not a concern for any of the people who have a house on the top of things?
Correct, no.
It won't ever go up rather than just down?
No, it'll just go down to the river. The gradient's going to go down to the river.
But do we have regulations against sandpoint wells?
I don't believe we do. I think that's all regulated by the state, the drilling of wells.
If somebody wanted to put a watering, I have a well on my property left over from the farm days, and we use it for watering. If one of my neighbors wants to drop a well in, they can't do that?
Mr. Ellis?
I believe that we do have ordinances that would require some type of approval by the city, but ultimately the permit to do that would be issued through the state DNR, Department of Natural Resources.
Should we
would
not
issue that.
maybe be proactively, thinking ahead on this in case we either want to communicate with the state or else even look at our own ordinances here in the city?
And we are doing that. We're actually going through a wellhead protection program. We're working with, I believe, DNR on that as well. But it's something that we're required to do, and you will see some ordinances that require certain protections on wellheads, capping of wellheads at a later date, but that is something we are working on.
They should know now, and I don't know that they do, that they should not be, are you okay? They should not be drilling a well in that area, and I just want to know that somebody would actually be overseeing that and maybe stopping that process.
Wouldn't the well drilling company have to do
Well, one would think, but, okay, sorry.
All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it might be Department of Health might be the one that regulates sandpoints anyhow, but they certainly oversee well drilling. One thing I did want to mention, just in passing along here, is I heard we talked about sublot. There's sublot A and sublot B, and sublot A is this part up on top over here. Sublot B is down here. It's a little kind of a odd-shaped piece that kind of goes over the bluff and down to the river. I know there was some talk about dedicating that piece to the city. And I think currently the agency, we do have some wells, some groundwater wells down in this area, and we would like to retain ownership of that at least until the construction is done and stuff like that. So we would prefer not to have it dedicated to us at this time. I know that was a suggestion, I think it was, and for on one of the documents I read. And we would prefer at least to hold on to it for time being, and then we'll see how things go once construction is completed, and we've had an opportunity to see how things kind of settle down after that.
Are you saying the state owns currently the land where the river cuts in?
No, we own nothing right now.
Because we'd like you to own that.
Well, BFI owns this piece that goes down here, this little leg down here that goes down to the river.
Right.
They own that, and they will be giving that's part of the land they will transfer to the state.
The washout area that needs to be mitigated. I'm seriously asking. That's current BFI. I thought that was.
I don't think that's the same property. That Expo was
right.
west further.
Because we'd like to dedicate that one to the state, the one that
we have already.
Which one is this? What are we talking about?
Expensive mitigation.
Oh, okay. Well, no, that's you guys can keep that. All I do is close landfills. Okay, the other area of concern we have with landfills is, of course, landfill gas. What happens with landfill gas is, of course, you get anaerobic digestion of the organic matter. It creates methane gas, which is an odorless gas. It'd be something like natural gas. It's flammable. It's poisonous. Right now, we have about what's called a 300-foot area of concern drawn around the landfill. So that's that. You can see the footprint here, and then you see that little band beyond that. What you can see is residents here there is no resident that's less than 800 feet from the landfill footprint. Okay, so we feel very confident there are no problems with the residents. Not so good with BFI right now. They have a couple of their buildings that are within 150 feet of the footprint, and their business operations are within 250 feet of the operations. One of the reasons we would like to pull this waste back away from here, that's one of the things you're going to see a proposal on here in a few minutes, is we're going to we want to pull all this back up onto here to get it as far away from their business operations as possible. Okay.
Question on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an environmental, is it because based on the lay of the land that it would make more sense to place it on the east side, or is it just for what you just said, taking it away from the businesses?
We want to address human health and safety concerns.
Well, my issue is you're moving it next to residential property. Wouldn't you?
We're not moving it closer to the residents. It'll be up on top of the landfill here. We're still at least 800 feet away from the residents.
So you're also squeezing in away from the residents, or not?
No, it's just it's being dug up here and here and brought over to here. So this whole piece would stay.
But if you had the opportunity to move it, well, I apologize for BFI employees, but nonetheless, I would much prefer to move it over next to a business that employs just daytime workers than to keep it over next to residential that obviously has people living there all the time and kids playing in the yards.
But we have, okay, I understand your concern, but I also understand that we have a 300-foot compliance boundary already around this site, and we still have at least 500 feet between the outermost ring where that gas could travel, 300 feet.
I understand
It's
that, but if
still
you had the
another 500
opportunity,
feet to the nearest resident.
I get that, but if you had the opportunity to gain another 200 feet to push it even further away from residences, why wouldn't you?
Well, we do have, all right, and the fill here is about 28 feet deep. The fill here is about 100 feet deep. It's going to be virtually impossible for me to dig up, especially in this northern part here, to dig up 100 feet of waste, dig down 100 feet, and pile it up on top of here.
Well, that's, I guess, what I was asking initially, if the
Yeah.
lay of the land was.
But our primary concern in this is going to be human health and safety. And yeah, I understand you're looking at the residents, but I'm just looking at human health and safety in the broader sense and saying, you know, the BFI workers, there's some risk, especially if the landfill gas system were to go down.
One of the things I thought you were trying to accomplish with this project as well was to kind of dome the waste so that the liner on top would shed the water and allow the water to run off, and that's
Right.
one of the reasons why you're putting it, piling it up, so
Correct.
to speak, as opposed to
Yes. having
having it flat and laid out.
Right. And that's another, because right now it is lumpy on top, so you do get ponding. And, yeah, we will dome it, but I want to be careful with the doming term, because I think I got in trouble with that last time, because, and Ben's going to talk about that, because he's the engineer. We did hear your concerns last time, and we've kind of flattened it out a little bit, we've kind of spread things out a little bit. We still get the runoff, fine, but we've sort of addressed this whole dome
Sloping,
idea. So,
though.
yeah, it's more sloping, right.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, yeah, one of the reasons we want to put some... we want to raise the top a little bit is so that you get better runoff. All your water gets to run off then instead of seeping through the fill and possibly contaminating the groundwater more.
One quick comment. If you use your mouse, you can use your mouse as a pointer on the screen, and then that way everyone will be able to see it on their monitors instead of having to do that.
Oh, that's nice. Wow. Okay, boy, talk about high tech.
There you go.
Jeez,
Now you can use that as
okay.
a pointer.
Then you don't have to watch me shake, huh?
Yeah.
Anyhow, so we're still talking about the affected property notice, and so once the Eden Prairie has received this information, then it is your responsibility to incorporate that information into any local land use plans that might include this affected property. So what we were just talking about with this offsite, the plume, and the area of concern and stuff like that. As I suggested, you might want to put in something like a well ordinance, drilling ordinance. I know that's one way one city is doing it right now. It might be something you want to think about. I don't have any control of that kind of stuff. That's really local government. And then the other thing that you're required to do is notify any person who applies for a permit. So if someone were to come in and apply for a permit in one of those areas of concern, then you have to make that information available to them so they know that there are some concerns related to that property.
Is that any permit? Like if you want to put a porch on the back of your house, then you have to inform them that potentially...
No, I think it would have to do more with, like, if they were going to build an enclosed structure in the gas area of concern, for instance, or if they were going to put a well in the groundwater plume, those would be the types of things.
Okay, but you're saying that any of the residential areas now are not in the gas area plume, correct? And they won't be after you're done either?
They will never be in the gas, well, I should say never, but they will, as far as I know, they will never be in the gas area.
What about as we change the runoff for it? Will the runoff tend to run towards those residential neighborhoods?
The runoff will run towards a pond that we have in the southeast corner, just before it goes down over the bluff. There's a pond over there already built.
Could you put it up on the map and show us where that pond is? I've got a Bing map in front of me, but it doesn't include all your stuff.
Okay, the pond is over here.
Okay, so it's right next to the residential area.
It would be just below them, yeah. There's a bluff there, and it'd be just below that.
Is that pond such that in 100-year rain runoff, will that runoff from the dump go into those neighborhoods then?
No.
Because it looks like it's really relatively close to where you see those, streets.
Well, don't know how many gallons.
Everything, if the overflow fails for some reason, it would just go over the bluff if it overtopped everything.
Okay, so it's never going to actually run towards the neighborhoods then, it will just run over the bluff instead?
No.
Well, that's what we want to make sure about, because there's a number of streets there,
Right.
lots of houses, lots of people have a lot of money. There's some average-sized homes, and then there's some very large-sized homes, and perhaps some townhouses even where you've got a little higher density back there. So,
Yeah, most of it, I know these houses. Where's my little arrow thing here? Oh, there it is. Most of these houses sit up on top of a kind of a hill above. Above the landfill property itself. There's probably a 15, 20-foot drop right there.
Oh, okay.
And then it goes down into the pond, probably another 20 feet below that. So it would be a pretty sizable drop. And like Ben said, it would tend to just flow over the top of the berm and down into the river.
okay. Well, I just want to make sure that we're not changing a situation for that whole neighborhood where they all of a sudden need to have concern where they don't have it now.
No, I don't think so. Okay, we're going to talk about. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Wickstrom has a
Yeah, I
question.
just have a quick question. So is it an urban runoff pond? Is that what it is? So that, because there's sugar sand, I believe, up on that bluff, that area.
Maybe we can start. You want to start now?
We're asking so many questions, we're getting you off course.
This is a cover that's going to go on the landfill. And Ben can talk about, I'd like to talk about land management plans, but yeah. There we go.
Hi, I'm Ben Kleismith. Thank you for having me, Mayor and council members. I'm just going to briefly talk about the construction project that we're planning on doing here. On this picture here, you can see, well, it's a little bit hard to see. These blue dots are the ponding effects that we have right now, and the black is where the waste is at this point. And there's a few things that we look at when we're looking at construction plans. It's where there's going to be impacts, which is the buildings off to the east currently. And also, we want to minimize cost, to the state. So that's why we're pulling mostly back from the south and the west to get away from these buildings, but also this is thinner than on this side and definitely thinner than on the north side, so we can get more acres per dollar to reduce this footprint, because this high-density polyethylene is not cheap, and the drainage layer that we put on top of it is also expensive, and so on. So we're consolidating the waste footprint from 87 acres down to 57 acres. What we do is peel back the topsoil, one section at a time. We're not going to peel the whole thing off and leave it open or anything like that. Right now it's basically 3 phases, and the construction company has to do best efforts to keep the working phase at a minimum, but they also have to be efficient. So there's going to be some, some odor issues for this because it's a landfill. So we're going to consolidate this waste footprint as economical as possible, re-slope to 8%, I think is what our design is right now. And that's as low as we're comfortable with, because there's going to it's already settled differentially over time. That's why we're head ponding now. So we look to at least have 8%. So when it does settle, which it will, it doesn't actually affect our gas system, because right now it is affecting our system. So we want to be able to go in there once and have it work for the foreseeable future and not have any problems with that. So at some sites we go up to 20%. That's what we're comfortable with, but we brought it down to 8%. And that's because of the depth of the waste here also, is that it's not cost effective to keep on piling up to make a very steep slope, because it just costs so much to move that much more, because I'll show a picture of it. So this is a relatively, you see the construction at a relatively narrow seam of waste. on this. And this is synthetic cover being put on, and they seam between them with heat treatment, and there's lots of tests involved with that to make sure that it's consistent. This is the waste footprint that we're proposing, is that this is the edge of waste, and this is the edge of liner. So we are pulling a little bit from the south and a little bit away from the residents here, but most.
Use the other mouse. I think it'll show up on the screen over there. Yeah.
Okay, you can see that a little better. Okay. Here's the edge of liner, and here's the edge of waste that we are proposing at this point.
And this is, if I remember correctly, a year and a half process?
Year and a half to 3 years.
So my concern is what type of publicity you plan in order to tell the community, at least, contiguous to this landfill, what's going to be happening, because we were told last time that the odor will be definitely noticeable for months in there, and these people are living 1,000 feet away. And I'm no doubt we'll be getting calls, but I wonder both what the MPCA plans to do about letting people know, but also, of course, we want to be proactive about how we're going to notify people.
Well, there's definitely a requirement in law to have a public outreach before a project, and that can take many forms. Obviously, this is a good form to let people know. The last meeting that we had, we didn't advertise at all, and actually quite a few people, the public, came. And so we're still going to do an outreach, and we're still going to have another meeting to make sure that everybody knows.
Is there anything we can do from a perspective of construction, or whatever you want to call this, remediation, to lessen the effects of the smell and the odor being disseminated to the neighborhoods? Is there some kind of techniques or some kind of process that can be followed that would make it less objectionable to the residents that live close by?
Well, first off, we're going to start. Well, we're looking to start in the fall, which is the best way to minimize odor, because it's too cold, windows are shut, it's cold out, so the waste has significantly less odor during winter months. Usually there's a time period in the middle of winter that it's just too cold for the equipment to run, so we can't run all winter long. But once it's open, we'll probably be running all summer long, because they need to just get the work done. And that was part of another reason that's why we have 3 phases to this, is that at some of our landfills, even of our large landfills like these, where they're way up north and there's nobody that cares, the most efficient way to run something is just to strip it off, and strip the dirt off first and then start moving waste. Well, we're not going to do that here. We're going to do it in at least 3 phases and ask that the construction company minimize working face to minimize odor. And this is actually a fairly significant distance, so it's really going to depend on whether or not they're going to be smelling anything, because there is quite a bit of topography here, and a quarter mile away from the main body of the waste, closest to the next resident.
There's always been an odor to that, I hate to tell you, but all bets are off on that. I do have a question for you, though. As far as the cover, how that methodology of using that thick cover, how tested is that? I'm just curious. Of your other 112 landfills, have you used that methodology before? And how many years have you tested it out?
I don't think there's ever really been a failure of high density. Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Peter Tiffany. I'm the other engineer, I guess, working in the closed landfill program. Yeah, we've probably put over 60 covers on landfills throughout the state, ranging from maybe little 2, 3 to 5 acre sites up to well, let's see, the Duluth landfill, the Western Lake Superior Sanitary District landfill, is about an 85 acre site. So we've used this particular kind of plastic for quite a bit. In terms of how long it's going to last, that's still being tested, let's say. Modeling that's been done by The Geosynthetic Research Institute in a university, Drexel University, has predicted, and I say this quite seriously, up to 999 years that it's going to last. It's a very tough plastic. The polyethylene is very robust in terms of all sorts of different solvents, acids, bases, as long as they're not too strong. And what we have, the leachate in these landfills isn't that strong. We're not pouring pure acetone or something like that onto this.
So will the state just own this property then for X amount of years, so that if, I don't think we maybe thought that when we put the other cover on that this would happen so soon. And so I'm just thinking into the future, and maybe it won't be, did you say 900 years?
Yes, I did.
Who knows, right? But I still care.
One thing, if I might, one thing to point out, the cover that's on there right now was using technology that was pretty normal back in the 80s, and that's a clay cover. So it's a compacted clay cover, which clay is very low permeability soil if it's compacted properly. The problem is it's not very, and I'll use the word plastic, it can't stretch. If you've got a chunk of clay and you just put a little bit of stress on it, it cracks, and that's what's happened here. So these ponds, it's not that the water is sitting there and evaporating, but if it happens to be in one of these places where the crack is, then it also is draining through that crack. The rest of the clay is very impermeable, but where the crack is, boom, it
and
soaks in.
I understand. It makes sense what you're saying. I just remember when we put that in, or when that was going in, feeling like, oh, this is really good and this is going to be solid and last. And so, it just makes you a little wary, about other methodologies. So all I'm asking is, so what happens in the future if, at some point, if the council in the future is back, asking the same questions again, will the state still be responsible?
We've got this until there's no risk associated with the site anymore.
Bless your heart, is all
which
I can say.
is going to outlast all of us. I'll guarantee you that. It will outlast all of us.
I've got a question that I'm sure is going to occur to many people. Why is it, I understand this is sunk and all this other things, but why is it that you can't just build it up without tearing anything off and then drilling your gas wells? Why does this have to be torn off in the first place instead of adding to it, getting the slope right, putting your plastic over the whole top, and then drilling the gas wells that you need to drill? Why can't you just do that instead of, and I want to go back to a question about how long this odor is going to be there, but why do you have to disrupt the lives of so many thousands of people to do this? Why not just build it up instead?
Well, to get the types of grades that we would need, the 8%, we'd have to import soil, basically. Like we have borrow soil here for this project. Like everything that we're going to do is going to be on site, so there's not going to be added truck traffic. But if we were to build it up to a reasonable slope, the cost would be, it's really unbelievable.
The cost to move waste on typical projects on site is between $2 to $2.50 a cubic yard. And Ben showed a picture earlier of the off-road trucks that are used to move that waste. If we had to haul soil from off-site, that can range anywhere between, depending upon where the gravel pit is, $8 to $12 a cubic yard, and that's only hauling it in a smaller, 15 cubic yard truck, let's say. So there's a lot of extra truck traffic. It really increases the cost. So we're trying to balance risk and cost, and yes, there's going to be an inconvenience to the nearby residents for a short period of time, but the overall, I guess, goal of our program is to reduce risk and also to remediate the environment. And the gas system right now is not operating efficiently because it can't, because of so much settlement in the gas pipes. Those gas pipes are kind of like sewers, except they've sagged now, so the water collects in the sags and it doesn't let the gas through. And then also the continued percolation of surface water through the waste and contaminating the groundwater is something that will also eliminate. It's a balancing act, and that's, I guess, the best that we can do is to try to get the project done as quickly as possible, and yet be effective such that we're not going to have to do this again in another 20 years.
Now, you said it could take between 1 and 3 years. What has to be done to make this take 1 year rather than 3 years? Because 3 years is not a small amount of time. And 1 year is probably 6 months more than anybody would want this to go if you start in September. So how does this keep not being like one of these road projects that seems to be, they start and then it sits and you see nothing happen for 9 months and then they start again? How do you do this in 1 year or 6 months to 1 year and not let it go to 3 years?
For us and for this project, it's primarily money that controls how long it's going to take, because you can accelerate, but it's going to not only, we need the money now, all $10 million, but if we actually did it in feasibly, something like 11 to 13 months would be the fastest, but that was going to cost a lot more also.
Well, are you going to start this project before you have all the money available then? Because the last thing, quite frankly, I want as a city council member is to have you start this project with enough for the first quarter of it, and then it sits open for the next 4 to 5 years because the legislature is low on money, and in fact, Eden Prairie smells like a dump.
That would be awful. But we get money from the remediation fund, which is a fee on everybody's garbage bills, effectively. So we have dedicated funds that come in, no matter if bonding doesn't come through, because legislature is a political system, so
we've noticed
we won't get all the money. But we do have dedicated funds, and we do know that we can get the project done.
Well, but how long do your dedicated funds make this project take? And why wouldn't you wait for another year till your dedicated funds build up so you know you can get this done in a year instead of 2 to 3 years?
That comes back to the efficiency of what the contractor is going to be running at, because to do it in a year, you need 3 times the equipment.
So you're saying this is going to be a 3-year project?
What's that? Oh, go ahead.
Mayor and council members, my name is Doug Day. I supervise the closed landfill program. And as Peter had mentioned earlier, we have undertaken cover projects like this at about 60 sites, so this is not unfamiliar to us. The question that you've brought up is a very good one about starting a project and then stopping in the middle. We can't do that. We would not do that. We haven't done that yet on any of our projects. We will not start this project unless we have adequate bond funding to start it up, because we have other funding that's already in place for this project, but we need additional bonding to do that. And right now we're waiting for the legislature to act on a bonding bill that would support this effort.
Okay, but I still don't understand how that addresses Kathy's question, because her concern is that you said that the range of time might be a year to 3 years. And her question is, how can you make sure, why are you telling us that's the range if it's not going to be a 1-year project?
There's a lot of things that affect the range, and obviously, and Ben mentioned the fiscal issue. You have to throw more money into something, and we don't have unlimited funds like everybody else. But there's also another factor that we need to mention. That is, there's a lot of other factors that enter into how long a project could take. You can have bad weather that can shut you down, and we have no choice in that matter. It isn't just cold weather. You can have rainstorms. We recently completed a project out at Washington County and the Lake Elmo landfill, and we had some shutdown periods because of heavy rains. That can stop the projects too, and we had a state shutdown. That stopped us as well. That slowed things down. And we don't have control of the weather. We don't have control of state shutdowns. So there are other factors that enter into the equation. Having said that, yes, we could look for a speedier completion of the project, but how fast we can speed that up is really dependent
on the money factor, and we don't have unlimited funds to do that. Now, I think it was mentioned that this is typically would be a 2 to 3 year project. That was the when we did the recently completed the Washington County project I just mentioned. That was supposed to be a 3-year project. It was done in 2 years. So it was able to be done quicker, and we would certainly push for that. And as was mentioned by Mr. Getchow, there will be a public hearing on this closure activity, and these kinds of comments we will certainly take into account before we introduce this to you in that public hearing.
Okay. A couple more questions. How bad is this odor going to be? Is this going to be something mild that if the wind is just right, you might notice? Or is this going to be something that makes our big Homeward Hill Park unusable basically for 2 to 3 years?
Well, I'm kind of used to the smell personally because I go out to the sites all the
That's
time.
not my question. You know, people get used to shoveling manure in the smell too, but actually a neighbor would really notice manure pile in their backyard. So what are we talking about?
Washington County, I think, was the worst of our projects from an odor standpoint and nearby residents. I'll first state, and I think you've heard me say this before, the question came up to one of the Department of Health employees who happens to live in Lake Elmo as well, so he addressed this to somebody that was complaining about the odors. It's not a health risk. It's not a health hazard, I should say. It is an annoyance. So it's somewhat dependent upon, the person's tolerance, and there will have to be tolerance. I mean, there's no way around that. I'm never going to say that this is going to be a pleasant odor. It might be, some people might associate it more with a compost type odor, just degrading leaves or something like that, but somebody else might say it's just some really sour garbage. Also, each landfill that I've been on is unique, and the types of waste that were put in there is unique. The rate of degradation could affect the types of odor that you're going to be smelling. It's primarily various sulfur products, the mercaptans, the smell, the odor that they put in natural gas so that you can actually smell the natural gas, because again, methane is odorless. Those sorts of things, if there's a lot of that present, it's going to be more noticeable. It's not going to be something that people are just going to say, fresh country air. No, but the attempt is going to be made to again limit the amount of cover that we've got to expose, or cover that we've removed to expose the waste at any one point in time, to balance out with when we are excavating the waste and piling it up. When we do, one of the things that we do, once we reach grade for the waste that we're placing somewhere, then it has to be covered with soil right away so that it limits the odor that's being produced out of that. We won't just, make 5-6 acres of waste at grade and leave that exposed and then finally get around to having the soil put on it. If the contractor reaches grade with the soil with the waste, then they're going to put the buffer soil on top of it.
A thing that just bothered me more, you said he lived in Lake Elmo. So that we're not just talking about this odor going over the property that's, say, within a mile of the dump. It could go over anything to the west of the dump, or east of the dump with the west winds, you're saying?
It'll depend upon weather patterns for sure, and it could be noticeable, maybe a half mile to 3/4 of a mile. I don't know if it'll be noticeable at a mile, but then again, it depends upon the sensitivity of the person.
How will this affect to like airport operations across the street?
I doubt very much that it'll have any impact. We've already, our consultant is also uses MAC as a client, and so they've had discussions directly with MAC in terms of height restrictions mainly, and we aren't going to be violating any of their height restrictions that FAA imposes. I've never really seen a problem with old waste with birds. At landfills, that operating landfills where they're bringing in fresh waste, there's always seems to be, hundreds, if not thousands of gulls flying around. I don't see that at our landfills. Actually, the only time I see birds at our landfills is after we've seeded the cover, the final cover, and we'll see geese on the property. But that's about the only bird issue that I see. And so I don't think there's going to be a problem with the airport operations.
When you're bringing this stuff up from, I wouldn't be quite as worried if you were leaving everything alone and building it up, but you're taking garbage from one part and moving it to another. How do you know absolutely that you're not going to go into toxic waste? Things were different in the 50s and 60s when this was an open dump. So how sure are you that you're not going to be moving something that's way down now, way up, that could be a very not good situation? Do you have a pretty good notion of what's down there?
Our experience is that we've rarely found any intact barrels, and that's pretty much what you'd have to be seeing is an intact barrel. Most of these have been rusted away, and anytime we do find a barrel that seems to have something in it, it's usually just a hardened resin of some sort. It's solid, just like a dried up paint in a paint can. If there is something that is suspect, the contractor is required to back off, and then we would evaluate it. But we've rarely had anything like that happen, and most of the time it's just with bagged asbestos that was legally buried and will be reburied in the landfill. It's just that then we have to use proper procedures to dig it up, move it, and bury it again.
So it's not something really that anyone needs to be concerned about, it sounds like.
Well, the workers are exposed the worst, and our consultant and ourselves, when we're out there, Ben will be out there inspecting it directly. They're going to be the ones that are most exposed to it. We're also more familiar with what to look for, and I guess I haven't had a problem yet with any. Actually, I don't think we have never from maybe Albert Lee. Albert Lee, we did find some stuff, didn't we? But we knew that was an old Superfund site. We knew there was something, that had been buried there from some responsible party, and we anticipated that.
Okay.
We don't really anticipate anything here.
Councilmember Wickstrom has a question.
Well, I was just going to say, I think you three fellas were back in the day when people were coming up and saying what they had actually put into the dump, what they had left behind at the dump. And so this has been my concern since we started talking about this, is what's there that we don't know about that we're going to expose and uncover again, and what will happen. So I don't feel very good about that, to be honest with you, after having sat in this room and heard the things that people have left behind. So, Ben, you're going to be there every day watching the contractor for things that might be uncovered?
I'll be there once a week for construction meetings. And we'll have our consultants, Wank, I believe we're going to have work on this. They'll have an oversight on site all the time, third party. They're our consultants, neutral to make sure that the construction company is doing it correctly and not cutting corners.
Okay. I'd like to pull us back to maybe the presentation that this group wants to make. There's going to be ample opportunity for other questions. Really what we're dealing with today is simply the subdivision of the property. And we're going to have an opportunity to ask more questions and make sure that this is done in a way that is of least nuisance to our residents. So if you want to pick up where, I don't know where really you left off with your presentation, we've kind of hopped around. But if there's some other salient points you want to make at this point, that would be wonderful.
I think the only points left to make are, with regards to subdivision 9, the agency has been recommending that the local government unit at Eden Prairie adopt something called the closed landfill restricted zoning district. It's a new district, and basically what it does is just precludes any kind of development on the property. So there'd be no enclosed structures on the property. There would be no type of wells or anything like that. So the property would, just remain vacant, basically vacant property, at least for the foreseeable future. We've talked about construction here quite a bit, so I'm not going to bother with that too much. I think the other question that's come up is kind of, well, what does the agency plan to do with the property long term? And I think there are probably two things that have to be mentioned as far as where the landfill itself is, the groundwater monitoring the groundwater wells, the gas probes, and that type of thing. The agency has a significant investment in that landfill, or will have in the future. We expect to spend about $17 million on that site for construction. So we would probably preclude any type of access to those areas. We're talking dangerous areas. If there's a flare out there, it's running about 1,500 degrees or something like that. So we don't want people just sort of wandering around and throwing baseballs and frisbees and that type of thing. So that's kind of, at least initially. I did mention that with Sublot B, I know the planning people have mentioned that they would maybe like to get that eventually. That's the piece that's right along the river. And certainly in the future, that would be fine. We do have, like I said, we do have equipment there now, but depending on how things go in the future, that would be something we can negotiate. And there are other areas of the landfill, but I think if I want to leave you with one thought, it would be any of the open areas where there isn't any remediation equipment. I think we would be looking at proposals for surface uses of the property, so there will be no enclosed structures, no wells. Think Frisbee Park, or think dog runs or something like that might be something we could look at in the future. Those are some of the things that are used on other landfill property. Otherwise, it's going to remain pretty much in perpetuity a big grassy field once this project is completed.
Okay, and no trees added for screening or anything?
Are there trees?
Okay.
Sounds like no trees proposed. Well, there wouldn't be any on the footprint anyhow, but it doesn't sound like any screener, at least no screening around no screening or anything. Is that what being said?
Okay.
It can always be discussed later as fine-tuning, and we wouldn't do it ourselves. We generally like to put an allowance in the contract with the contractor, and then kind of let the city pick and choose, up to that allowance.
Okay, but it's in terms of the integrity of the structure, it's not that issue. It's just a cost issue.
For the periphery, if you're talking the footprint, no, we wouldn't want the landfill top is mowed to keep any kinds of trees or woody plants or anything off the cover, because it tends to damage. It may damage the cover.
Okay.
So.
Okay, Mr. Rosso.
Madam Mayor, I was just wondering if I could ask a question with respect to the zoning. Is the closed landfill zoning on property owned by the state, or are you proposing that affects privately owned property?
No, it would be just landfill it's just the property that's owned by the state.
And what about the property owned by Wood Lake?
That's their zoning. I hear you just changed the zoning to industrial. That's fine with me.
Oh, okay, so it's just the state property. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Councilmember Aho.
Just if you could kind of inform us and briefly remind our audience and viewers at home why the MPCA is taking over the landfill as opposed to the current owners remediating the property, just to give us a little brief background on that.
Well, the agency has taken over the long-term care. That's pursuant to the binding agreement that we signed in 1995. So we legally have the responsibility to do this. I think what we would like to do is take ownership of the property for a couple of reasons. One is it gives us more flexibility in funding. And Doug mentioned bonding. We wouldn't be able to spend bond dollars on privately owned property, so that does limit our funding sources if it remains with BFI. I think the other thing is we would prefer not to spend that kind of money on a privately owned piece of property. We'd prefer to own the property. The other thing I think from I first started with the program, and there was a real reluctance to own property. At that time, like I said, this is unique for the agency to own property. But we found that we have more flexibility with the property if we own it. like I said before, a lot of my sites are up north, so what I deal with is deer stands and, stuff like that on my property. But if there's a deer stand on state-owned property, I can call the conservation officer, they come out and chase them off. If it's owned by the county, I can't do that. The conservation officer is not going to come on somebody else's property and chase them off. They chase them off on state-owned property.
Right, but why have the state do this as opposed to the owner that...
Well, because that's my responsibility. I have the long-term care responsibility for the landfill pursuant to the binding agreement.
I think Councilmember Aho's talking maybe about the history. So thinking about the entire closed landfill program in general.
Oh, I see. Okay.
People are
and why we're kind of at this state now.
Okay.
Because it came up at the
Right.
Plan Commission meeting as well as to kind of the responsibility that's been left with the state of Minnesota with this program.
Okay.
Am I correct
I'm
in that's
sorry,
what
I
you're getting at?
misunderstood.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get, because people are going to hear this and they're going to ask, well, why is the state responsible for owning this property? Why are they responsible for remediating it when they didn't create it?
I'm sorry. And this really started with Anoka County. Anoka County has at least three federal Superfund sites in it. They were all going in the Superfund at the same time, and at that time, which would have been the early 1990s, the only way they could clean up these types of properties, landfills, was to go through the Superfund process, which basically identifies responsible parties, which is primarily businesses, and then it goes down to lower levels, smaller businesses, and at some point they've even gone to what's called de minimis contributors that all contribute some portion to the cost to clean up these sites. And what happened was many of the businesses, especially in Anoka County, were having a hard time because they were involved with 3 Superfund cleanups at the same time. They were being identified as responsible parties at all 3 sites. And the state decided that it would be in the best interest of, since landfills, if you've lived in the state of Minnesota and you've lived here for a few years, you contributed waste to this landfill. We all know that. So at some point, you're all responsible parties. And the state decided that the best way to do this was just that we would take over the long-term care of landfills that had been permitted during some portion of their life and had collected municipal solid waste, which is household garbage, and that we would, as Ben said, collect a fee on your solid waste when you get your bill from your hauler. There's a solid waste tax that goes into a kitty. That pays for a portion of that money pays for my program, and that just takes all of these sites out of Superfund, all these landfills out of Superfund, and puts them into the sort of a societal type of addressing of this one unique kind of problem.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Getchell and Mr. Rosso, today we're being asked to do a reading for an ordinance zoning district change and adopt a resolution for preliminary plat, but are we de facto giving them permission to go ahead and do this remediation? Or do we still have the ability at this point to have input on the timeline and some of the other issues that council members have brought up?
This is a hearing on the zoning and the replatting of the property. And that's what you're doing. The ultimate authority of the council to say no to the project is difficult to say that you have that authority, because this is the state of Minnesota that's doing this. Mr. Aho's questions clarified that this is being done because the legislature in 1993 mandated the takeover of these sites if all the litigation surrounding them was dropped by June 15th, 1993. And that happened all across the state, and the state decided cut the bleeding of all the litigation and put the money into remediation. Mm-hmm. So, and now the state subsequently decided to take over ownership. So there is public hearing processes, public input. They have to hear the community's concerns, but the ultimate decision to go ahead by the state with its property to do what it believes is in the best interest of the citizens of the state is to clean up that property, and you may have very little say ultimately about yes or no, you can go ahead.
But it kind of sounds like the only stick that we have is tonight, the replatting.
Well, if you didn't go ahead with the replatting, I don't know that that would prevent the state from doing the remediation work that it has to do. It might make it more difficult real estate-wise for them to define responsibilities and ownership areas.
But it's ultimately not going to change the way things play out.
I do not believe it would change the way things play out.
Keep in mind what the stick is, too, because what are our objectives? Do we not want a safe landfill?
Oh, yes, definitely.
I mean, clearly something has to be done. Leaving it alone is not okay. We're all concerned about how we're going to get it fixed. But we all want it fixed.
And nor do we have the money.
So this is a step tonight to get it fixed.
Right.
Let's, just be clear that we want to make sure that it's fixed as appropriately and less invasive as possible, but we got to get it fixed.
Nor have we put aside any funds to pay for it to be fixed. So that's a huge thing.
This is all a really good thing. I guess I want to, on some level, throw accolades at the MPCA and say,
after all these years.
That's a great thing.
Yeah,
and obviously, we're just concerned about the impact for our people.
Okay, is it okay if everybody, if I open up the public hearing now? Okay. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this subdivision? Sure. Come on up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and state your question. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Bob Reitz, and resident at 16329 Milford. So I'm a long ways away from the smell that'll happen. It does sound like this might be your only opportunity to slow the process down, and that concerns me. But the real reason I wanted to come up here was you made a point about the amount of money and the weather and what have you. To me, I think it's important that the council realizes that we want to make sure you do this in a timely manner. We don't want 18 to 36 months. And so to protect that, there ought to be some kind of agreement with the council, maybe Mr. Rosso, the attorney, with a contract somehow that stipulates you've got to meet this certain deadline, whatever it is, 18 months, 24, 36, and that there's contingency money. When you talk about enough funds, but I want to make sure you set aside enough funds for those contingencies. And if the weather is bad and you can't work, there's alternatives. You can hire extra crews. You can work overtime, Saturdays. There's a lot of concerns there that I have around the timeline. And I share Councilmember Nelson's thoughts and all that as well. But again, right at the end here, you kind of caught my attention saying this may be your last chance to slow it down. Maybe do some public hearings first before you allow the plat changes.
Well, and that's what I was trying to get at with my question to Mr. Rosso and Mr. Getcho is, does it change anything if we don't make this move tonight? And it sounds like it doesn't. They could still proceed. It would be more complex, though.
I think ultimately they'd still be able to proceed. It might be more complex. Your big stick was months ago when we told them no to the Hopkins garbage.
Yeah.
Because we had a right to tell them that. I don't believe we have a right to tell them that they cannot implement a statewide policy to remediate this landfill.
Yeah.
But can you make sure that it gets implemented correctly or to the best benefit of our citizens, so that
I don't think
I don't want 3 summers of going up to the ball field having to wear a gas mask.
Oh, I know.
That really concerns me. And so if there's a method to make sure it's done right, maybe you do add dirt. I saw 1 million trucks build 212 of dirt. We ought to be able to pull that off somehow. So I think there's a better way. And I want to make sure you don't lose the opportunity to vet all that out.
I'm not in the business of giving accolades to the MPCA. I'm impressed with, and my career would bear that out. But I'm impressed tonight with their presentation, their willingness to listen. I believe they're taking to heart the comments that the council has made about, and have heard those comments, and will work with us. But ultimately, it is the state of Minnesota, and we are a creature of the state of Minnesota, and we cannot ultimately tell the legislature and the state what to do.
So does the city have any input on how it's done or when it's done?
We do have these opportunities to have. This is the second major conversation we've had about this. They've come back and told us that they've listened to that and redefined the slopes so that they would take into consideration some of those concerns. I've heard other concerns expressed here tonight, and I would expect they'll take those into consideration, but ultimately they have to decide how the project is going to be run. I think it would be unrealistic to, in a construction project of this complexity, to say you have to be done on a particular date, come whatever, because weather will impact that.
So is there a contract with the MPCA in this
With the
property?
city? No.
With the city?
No, there is no contract with the
So
So
there
we
is
have-
no stick.
we have input, we have no control.
There's no control. Okay.
It's
Then
it's
why
like, it's
have
like the interchange
public-
project at 494 and
Why have
169.
2 more hearings then if, thanks
So
for
they can
listening,
get
but
more
it's
input
still coming.
about our concerns.
And we have found out that really communication both ways, so where people can talk about what they're worried about, and then there can be some input about what the process will be, has always
Right.
served us well. So I think the more we can do that, the better
You know,
for residents.
I just have this fear we're going to be the laughing stock of the Twin Cities with the odor of Eden Prairie, and there's got to be a way to slow that down.
I empathize with that fear. When I hear you say slow something down, I get real nervous that we have a malfunctioning, potentially dangerously polluting landfill that has to be fixed. So the idea of slowing down could
I get
really,
that.
really hurt us.
Do it right, maybe not slow it down, but do it
We're all
right.
concerned about that.
And we're going to say those words over and over, and hopefully they'll hear that. But our stick
But
is
hear it, but you can't enforce it.
Right,
can't.
because we don't have
Right.
zoning authority legislatively, or power, or whatever. I don't know what you'd call it, but
The good news is that they've listened to us to date, as Mr. Rosso mentioned, and that they've come back to us and they've made changes to their plans that have incorporated some of the concerns that we've had. So I think currently the track record has been good, that they are listening to what we're
I just don't
saying.
want to cross my fingers and hope it works. You know?
Also, keep in mind that Lake Elmo did not suffer because of this, and they've gone through it, so you don't hear anything about Lake
But
Elmo
it
and
could.
the problems.
I mean,
so.
you could. the
Probably won't
construction-
happen here either.
All kinds of things could happen. Construction could go on strike. The weather could be.
I agree.
There's all kinds.
But those are all things that we
Okay.
can't control, they can't control.
All right.
I'm going to be smelling this, too. I live pretty close to this, so every time I
We're gonna go
smell
from
it,
number one to
I'm just going to
number
remind
something
myself,
else
at
for a
least
while.
we're getting rid of groundwater pollution from the contaminants of that dump.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
in
you.
Medicine Land. Thank you. And there was somebody else.
My name is Michael Seelig. I live at 10232 Kirsten Place. If you could bring up the map that included the residence, I'd like to point out where my residence is, just so we have a good frame of reference. And while you're doing that, I do want to recognize that it is important to fix this. There's no question about that. I appreciate the council's questioning. Maybe we won't the streets. But I do have a great concern. When you see where I am, there's no breeze. There's no time when there isn't a breeze that runs right across that field. That's my backyard, and it really concerns me. Let me show you really quick.
Up there?
Yeah, I can just do it now. Maybe. There you go. Right here, where this point is.
That's your house?
That's my house.
Okay.
So we have a great concern that our backyard will be unusable for 3 years. We have a great concern that the odor will be there, and it's not just when the windows are closed or when the windows are open. There's an air circulators. I mean, there's fresh air coming into the house I think by state law. So you can't escape the odor. So all of these things concern me. They have talked about some of the concerns that we had at the last Planning Commission meeting, the size of the mound. I still haven't heard anything about the wildlife that lives there. Where's that wildlife going to go when the construction equipment moves in? Probably our house is on that street.
Backyard, maybe.
And it's not just the rodents, it's the predators. What happens to the animals that live, in the neighborhood. So there's lots of concerns. I agree with the original gentleman that maybe we want to slow the conversation, although we don't want to stop the process. And the city attorney said if you don't approve, it will slow the process just a little bit to have all of our concerns addressed. I I think Councilmember Nelson had a great idea. Bring a little more dirt, build it up, don't touch it. If it costs a little bit more, we have to wait a year. I'm not sure it's going to affect the groundwater situation or the methane situation that much. Again, I live right over the groundwater situation, and I've got a great view of a nice field until they start working. And then what happens when or if one of the houses on the streets has to go up for sale? What does that do to our property values? Will we even be able to sell the house? 1 year is a long time when you're trying to sell your house. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a quick time. So keep that in mind. Think about it. I really think that if we say no, we're not going to approve this, it gives a little more time for questions to be answered.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Council. Discussion or motion?
Seeing none, I would move we close the public hearing. Do you want to separate that off? Or,
Sure. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is closed. Discussion.
Well, I heard what Mr. Russell said, and I think I'm pulling something that I heard correctly, but we're just legitimizing an ownership issue by breaking apart the parcel and allowing BFI or Woodland or something to continue their operations on their 12 or 14 acres, whatever it is, and then separating off this to transfer the ownership that already the power or control over the land is with the MPCA. So it just feels fairly perfunctory, though I understand in the bigger picture it feels like maybe an opportunity to slow something down. I'm just scared that that backfires on us, because I'm not sure we want to slow it down. I actually would like to maybe speed it up and get the thing done and over with. These guys have control over 112 something in landfills, and they've done this 60 times. That they're not wet behind the ears. They're the experts in this regard. Not that they can't make mistakes, or we can't politically pressure them to get a little bit more money and do it faster. I think they're hearing that piece. I'm just worried that tonight we're mixing up issues.
Okay. Councilmember Aho.
Well, yeah, I guess I agree with Councilmember Case. I don't think that not approving this replatting is going to really make any difference in terms of when the project goes. And it looks like, from a project perspective anyway, we're looking at starting the project not till the fall anyway, which is going to give us time to have those public hearings. So I really don't think that we need to, slow the project down. I think that the process is going to unfold, whether we approve this or not, and I think the same process will unfold. And so I would vote for approving this tonight, and then moving forward, making sure that we hold all the public hearings, making sure that we listen to all the people's concerns, and work with the MPCA to try to make sure that we're addressing those concerns and really trying to do a good job in mitigating the amount of odor and disruption to people's lives. Obviously, we don't want to hurt property values in the close-by neighborhoods or anything like that, or health issues or anything of that nature. So let's move forward with it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I know that it's been my experience, I don't want to be naive, it's been my experience when the state wants to do something, they generally do it. And it seems like they have an opportunity to kind of trump city government in some ways. So, but I do like the piece that there is this level of responsibility that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is taking to get this done. And I think that is really important because it is failing. And the other thing is, I think as the months go by until we begin it, we do have the times to pull out more detail about what this will look like. And then I think we will be able to have something on our brand new website so that residents who are worried about it can maybe go on and check in and see what's happening. And as I said before, we must communicate 3 times what we think we need to, or what we should, because this concerns people's everyday lives, and it has for a very long time. And I want to make sure we do this as right as we can, given our abilities. But we need the state to work on this. We do not have the funding to do this. We have not set any funding aside, and it is a big, big issue. It's a safety issue. So I think we need to go with that.
Okay. Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, it's clear this is going to go on at whatever pace it goes on. I did hear them say that if they own it, they have more sources of money. And it sounds like having enough money is one of the pieces that gets this done faster. And so I don't want to put any impediment in the way of their getting more money to do this faster. And the last thing I want to see is this drug out over 4 years. And the fact that there's 6-7 times the cost, I don't see them being able to do that as a state either, as that doesn't seem to be where things are headed at the moment. And the state government, and unfortunately, ultimately, money does trump things a bit. So I think we need to go ahead with this tonight. All it really does is get them available to more money sources, and I don't see any real advantage to not having that money sources. I'm hoping they're hearing our whole plea of let's expedite this. Let's cover up the ground as fast as possible, cut back, do the smelliest stuff in the wintertime, and try to make it so our parks and our people's yards and our businesses come through this hole. And it's not northern Minnesota, and it's a very big urban city, more so than maybe some of these other places are. And so speed does matter, money matters. So I plan to vote for this so you get the maximum amount of money, but go ask for it, please, too.
Mr. Getchell, you have a comment?
Mayor, thank you. In a summary and kind of following up on what the council members said, if we kind of think about the two different tracks that are occurring here, and you have the one track of the state coming in to remediate their landfill, and we heard a lot about their ability to do that, how they do that, and how hopefully they work with the council and the staff and the residents about, with that project. And there isn't, frankly, any action at the council level needed for that. When we talk about the public hearings, we have the two public hearings at the Plan Commission level and at the City Council level for this rezoning and plat. And again, thinking that there'd be a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about that activity, we prepared ahead and thought it would be good to have a presentation that gets ahead. And I know we got off on several different topics, but that's important because that's what is on people's minds. But it can confuse the city's actions because, the mayor, you asked me earlier about future public hearings. We do have future public hearings at Planning Commission and Council related to that closed landfill zoning. That's our next action after the second reading of this action, and that again is related to what those uses are. But if we again put that parallel track of the remediation in the notices for the public hearings, we asked residents, our contact people were the MPCA, Tom and Ben, and to contact them about project-specific issues. So maybe one thing that we can do, because there's a lot of questions coming up now, is maybe we could move a little bit quicker on some type of open house or that communication from the MPCA sooner than later. I don't know when we were talking about hosting any public forums or open houses, which the MPCA has done in several other communities. But again, that's a separate track from the plat and the rezoning. But the sooner that's done, maybe the better, and hopefully we can engage our residents in that effort and what is a state project and what it would be, open houses that the state would put on, and obviously city staff would be a part of that. So that kind of clarifies that activity. At the same time, we have our land use issues as well. And again, we will obviously have people weigh in on the project at these future public hearings. But we understand tonight what authority and control we have, and it's important to be distinguished between those two things.
Thank you. Somebody want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve first reading of the ordinance for zoning district change from rural to I-2 on 12.4 acres and adopt the resolution for preliminary plat on 263.32 acres into one lot and two outlots, and direct staff to prepare a development agreement incorporating staff and commission recommendations and council conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. We have a fourth public hearing on the resolution authorizing the application to deed for a forgivable loan to Alexa RX through Deeds Minnesota Investment Fund.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item added tonight, although previously published in the April 5th edition of the Eden Prairie News, is for Alexa RX is a new company in Eden Prairie leasing a building on West 76th Street in Eden Prairie, and they have applied for Minnesota investment funds to help pay for tenant improvements and equipment purchases at their new property. When the city, even if we're a pass-through for state funds, we need to follow the business subsidy policy requirements and conduct a public hearing. But we do have tonight a representative from Alexa RX here, Lawrence Johnson. I think it would be a really good opportunity for him to introduce his company to Eden Prairie, talk a little bit more about their operations and the grant fund, or the grant that they're applying for. It's important to mention, too, this is just a public hearing and resolution of support for the application. Any future contract between the city and the state or the company would come at a future meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Larry Johnson. I'm the Regional Director of State Government Affairs for a company called Golden Living Centers, which you may or may not have heard of. We operate a total of 305 living centers or nursing homes in 21 states, including Minnesota, where we have 27 living centers or nursing homes. We currently employ over 3,000 staff in Minnesota, serving 13,600 residents and change. We operate nursing facilities, assisted living facilities. We operate a therapy company, a home care and hospice company, and we have a statewide impact of about $230 million per year. We recently expanded, as the city manager noted. We created a company called Alexa RX. That's a company specifically designed to deliver pharmaceutical drugs to nursing facility residents via what's called an automated dispensing unit, commonly referred to as an ADU, just for acronym's sake. We're looking to put those ADUs in all of our nursing facilities nationwide, and we're operating 5 hubs nationwide, one in Pittsburgh, one in Indianapolis, one in Birmingham, Alabama, one in Kansas City, and one here in the Twin Cities. We have already leased the facility at 10132 West 76th Street, over near 494 and 169, with all the reconstruction going on there. Our plan is to house at least 7 full-time pharmacists there to oversee operations in Minnesota, South Dakota, and Wisconsin with our living centers, and then ultimately, as this business takes off, hire more to operate, to oversee facilities, pharmacies in some of our other nursing facility companies, such as Good Samaritan, Benedictine, Extendicare nursing facilities, and contract with them directly. Our new model, as I was mentioning, utilizes automated dispensing, so it really revolutionizes the way drugs are distributed. Currently, if you're familiar, if you've had a loved one in a facility, you're charged for a 30-day supply of a given drug. Now, for 1,000 different reasons, that 30-day supply of drugs is delivered to the nursing facility, and if a patient has a change in condition, has an adverse drug reaction, has, God forbid, residents do pass away in nursing facilities, that 30-day drug supply, whether it's fully used or partially used, must be destroyed or eliminated. That's a great deal of waste. Our proposal, or our new model, would use computer technology for a nurse on site in the facility to have a one-dose distribution at the time of a med pass. He or she would then pass the drugs to the resident in question, and the automated system automatically codes and charts that order, which saves about an hour of time for the nurse per day, so they can actually be nurses rather than med passers. Obviously, that's a huge part of their given duties, but it actually gets them more one-on-one time with the patients and lets them be nurses rather than taking that much time each day to chart. So, like the city manager said, we've been in touch with Department of Deed, Department of Employment and Economic Development, and David Lindahl and Ms. Jeremiah with the city. We're seeking up to $200,000 to cover a portion of our startup costs. As I said, we are already hiring and building out the facility. We will ultimately have an impact of about $2.4 million over the next 2 years, and we intend on employing up to 66 people, everything from 7 to 10 pharmacy techs on site, service representatives, 7 full-time licensed pharmacists, 4 billing techs, data entry people, et cetera. So we're trying to be conservative with our numbers, but about 66 within the next 2 years, and then as things progress, we'll get larger from there. So like I said, we're here tonight just to seek the council's approval of this first step, of the second step. The preliminary step has already been filed with the department, and we need the council's approval to move forward to the second step. And then finally, I just want to invite each of you, when we do the grand opening, ribbon cutting, that kind of thing, we're estimating July 20th for that, and I'll be in touch with details on that if anyone's willing and available to come. So, and I can take any questions you might have.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for bringing your business to Eden Prairie. We appreciate it and look forward to that ribbon cutting in July. Council, any questions?
Just a quick question. So do you plan on, you'll be purchasing units and then just you're filling them there, or what exactly, what is the?
Well, the process, like I said, the current process is to get a 30-day supply of a given drug for a resident. This new system would allow a canister of a given drug that would be distributed. You place them in an automated dispensing unit, and they distribute 1 pill per med pass, so everything's contained right there. It's not the 30-day supply.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
But what is it that you're going to be doing at the facility? Are you actually?
That's kind of the nerve center, for lack of a better term. We're calling it a hub, but you'll have the pharmacists on site verifying that the correct drugs are being dispensed in each of the nursing facilities. You'll have oversight. You'll have all of the billing and pharmacy records kept right there. So it's really the center of operations for the area.
So you're really not going to have the drugs and things in that facility. The drugs will be out at the, you're not distributing the drugs from there.
To begin with, the canisters will be delivered there from the wholesaler, and they'll be delivered from here in Eden Prairie to the living centers around the region.
Okay.
Are the canisters already filled when they come from the distributor?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, the only question I have about this at all is you're a very, very large company, obviously, and I'm sort of confused about why you're eligible for a deed grant in the first place, because you certainly, this is a method for saving money through your companies, and you are a very large company. So why is this year eligible?
To be honest with you, when we were starting this up, I have colleagues in all of our other 4 regions, so like I said, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and they were getting just outright grants from the states that they're operating in. To be honest, I didn't think we'd qualify, but under the Minnesota Investment Fund, I don't know that there's a size requirement, but if you're investing X number of dollars and you're committed to staying for 2 years in X location and creating this many employees, they've set up a formula. Given, I don't know that the size of the company matters. It's just eligible funding that we've applied for. So. Okay. Well, I guess if you are, like I say, I am a bit confused, because obviously very large companies do things that innovate and save them money. It's just public money isn't always involved. But I guess we're just the pass-through agency, and if you qualify, I guess you qualify.
I think the focus for DEED has been to attract and retain businesses in Minnesota, and so the funds that they have are to go towards that effort of getting jobs back in Minnesota. I don't think it has so much to do with the size of the business.
Your Honor, council members, that's correct. This isn't a small business program or really regarding very small startups or anything like that. It's a job creation type of a program with the Minnesota Investment Fund. So the requirements for the program are more that you're going to stay here, you're going to provide the jobs, and if you don't provide the jobs, they have to actually pay it back, which is why it's considered a forgivable loan and not an outright grant at the beginning.
And usually we certainly like the jobs. There's no doubt about that. We also applaud innovation. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience who wants to address the council on the resolution authorizing the application for the DEED grant?
Seeing none, I would move that we close the public hearing and adopt the resolution authorizing application to the Department of Employment and Economic Development, or DEED, for a forgivable loan to Alexa RX through DEED's Minnesota Investment Fund, MIF.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Payment of claims. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call, please. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Councilmember Aho.
Aye.
Councilmember Butcher-Wickstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Case.
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Mayor Terlukens.
Aye. We need to call a meeting for the HRA, so I'd like to call the HRA meeting to order. Is our motion for approval of the minutes from the last HRA meeting, which was held December 6th, 2011.
Second.
Any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
First item is a resolution conveying property from the HRA in and for the City of Eden Prairie to the City of Eden Prairie and terminating the lease with the city. Mr. Getchell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. We do. So we have an HRA action and then a subsequent City Council action following that as well. But both actions relate to the City Center and the HRA original acquisition of the City Center back in 1992. And the HRA approved this property with the ability then to issue bonds for the payment of the property and for the improvement of the property. And subsequently, over time, then, we have leaseholders in here as well, the school district and C.H. Robinson as well, connected to this entire issue and this lease. But the main issue being that the HRA issued bonds and then refunded bonds at other periods in time. But the conclusion was that in February of this year, all the bond payments have been made, and therefore the lease payments from the city to the HRA obligations have been fulfilled. So the action here is to convey now that the HRA has been able to fulfill its debt obligations, convey this property to the City of Eden Prairie, And then the city council action will be to terminate the lease between the city and the HRA for the property as well. So it's somewhat of a procedural housekeeping issue, but as you know as well, one of our big projects this year is the analysis of this complete building, and the lease with C.H. Robinson expiring in 2014, and the lease that we have with the school that runs through 2023, but there are some triggers then with this action with the lease that may trigger a potential termination of the lease with the school, which then would lead to a new lease or a new arrangement as well. And we know through meetings and discussions with the school district that they're doing a facility review and analysis, but they've been obviously a very good tenant in this building, as had C.H. Robinson. But we'll be having discussions with them about, and we have actually had discussions already about this action that we're taking tonight, and then what subsequent actions may be as well. So it's obviously, there's the bigger project here, but tonight's action is that HRA action conveying the property and the council action of terminating that lease.
Okay. Mr. Rosso, do you want us to make each motion and vote on it separately?
Yes, I would. And in your annotated agenda, it actually has the city council motion first.
It should be second.
No, it should be
first.
Okay. Because in that resolution, the way it's drafted, the city requests that the HRA deed the property.
Okay. Technically, we have two meetings open now simultaneously.
We have two meetings open right now simultaneously, so that I would request the city council motion first, and then the HRA motion, and then closing the HRA meeting.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
You can agree with this.
Okay. Somebody want to make the motion?
Sure. I move to adopt the resolution terminating the lease between the city and the Housing and Redevelopment Authority in and for the City of Eden Prairie HRA, and requesting that the HRA convey to the city all of the HRA right, title, and interest in the property subject to the HRA lease.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The HRA motion.
I would move to adopt the resolution authorizing the Housing and Redevelopment Authority in and for the City of Eden Prairie, HRA, to convey to the City of Eden Prairie all of the HRA's right, title, and an interest in the property subject to the HRA lease, and declaring the termination of the HRA lease.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn the HRA?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We resume the City Council meeting with the first reading of an ordinance adding City Code Section 5.74 relating to regulations of the use of coal tar-based sealer products. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, this is the first reading of an ordinance regulating, in this case, restricting or not allowing coal tar-based sealer products to be used in our city. A lot of this has to do with the state of Minnesota, and the MPCA in 2010 established a grant program for local units of government to be able to clean up storm ponds and pond sediments, and we've taken advantage of that on a regular basis. And in that process, the state has found that many of the contaminants that are found in ponds come through the use of coal tar, and they've encouraged many cities and agencies. In fact, it's a requirement of being allowed to get into the grant program to restrict the use of those products. And there are asphalt-based products that are available, and in fact, several companies, if you were to go to Home Depot and Lowe's, do not even sell the products anymore if you're to do it on your own. This is more about residents who may hire a contractor, the city who may permit or license certain operations that the material that they use be coal tar. And there is a movement toward that, but it's both an environmental issue just as much as it is part of being part of a grant program as well. So this is the first reading of an ordinance regulating that, and there is a nice, I think, fact sheet in there that talks about coal tar and asphalt base and some of the issues associated with that. And Mr. Ellis is able to answer any questions as well, as this was prepared from Environmental Services.
Okay, great. And we kind of talked about this a little bit at our last council workshop. Council, any questions for staff? Somebody want to make a motion?
Move to approve the first reading of an ordinance adding City Code Section 5.74 relating to the regulating the use of coal tar-based sealer products.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Under appointments, we have Park and Rec and Natural Resource Commission. Mr. Getchell, or do you want to turn that?
Yes, Mayor, Council, I can handle this. We've had kind of a string of appointments here, a few meetings in a row due to some different circumstances. And so in this case, we have, as you remember, the inactivation of the Arts and Culture Commission, their duties being taken over by Parks, Rec, Natural Resources, and now Arts as well. And we had some members that were moving over from Arts and Culture to this commission, and one of those members, Cynthia Paulson, due to different job circumstances, has opted not to continue, which leaves an opening. And luckily, we did have a member who had interviewed. We had two interview. We appointed one of those people, Mr. Kraft, at a previous meeting. So now we have the opportunity to appoint Mr. Peshek as well to round out that commission and find spots for almost everyone that interviewed. And that's the action requested for Mr. Peshek for a term on that commission ending March 31st, 2014.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I would move to appoint Leonard Peshek to the Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Commission to a term ending March 31st, 2014.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Reports of council members. Councilmember Case.
You know, I have a bunch of items, and I think what I'll do is simply read them quickly and then pass them off to Mr. Ellis, and just to alert people and all of us up on the council that there's just a lot of traffic issues that have come to our attention, my attention, over the last week or 3 weeks. And I thought I'd just read them off really quickly, and then maybe at some point Mr. Ellis could, either in our weekly report or maybe at a future meeting. I think some of these are relevant to people's questions out there. So one is the left turn blinking yellow lights, which I've received a lot of positive comments about. Can we expand that? Can we get more and more of them on Pioneer Trail? It's complicated. I found out they're expensive, but again, he could report back. I've gotten several people who actually work in Eden Prairie, not necessarily that live here, that talk about the traffic glut on 212 coming east out of Chanhassen, that it just stops at about, 7 o'clock or 7:30 at bottlenecks there. I don't know if there's anything we could do. It's a state highway, but as we lobby for funds, or is there, something that we can look at in the future to really work on that, because I guess it's not good. Various traffic signal timing versus in-ground trigger options, like coming off the ramp at 494 when you're getting onto Flying Cloud Road. I've heard of people that are sitting there because it's timed when there's not a car in sight, and you're just sitting first, whether it's triggered by something in the road, and do we have any control or any advice giving on that kind of thing. And those are probably examples like that across the whole city that we don't drive or we don't have experience with. And then the one I've heard through the decades that really impacts you is the idea that on Preserve Boulevard coming south from the mall, you go from 2 lanes to 1 lane. So when you get to the intersection of Anderson Lakes Parkway, it just shuts down about rush hour. And I realize it's more complicated because at one point we were talking about expanding Anderson Lakes, and that's not probably going to be in our lifetime. But why couldn't we, almost in-house, why couldn't we get that second lane, I don't know how complicated that is, down all the way to the light, just because it stops there, it just bottlenecks in. And then finally, and this had to do with our issue down with Prospect Road, is that, and I think the gentleman talked to maybe several of us and emailed, but when I was down there, the sight lines coming off of Prospect going north on Spring Road didn't look bad as long as there's no traffic. But if there's traffic, people that live there claim they're whipping down that road at 50 miles an hour. And there's a crosswalk there so people can get across to that pool. And it's dangerous. So I know you suggested the possibility maybe we could look into some kind of a blinking yellow light warning of a crosswalk. Or it gets back to the whole prioritization concept of, do we have like the top 10 intersections in the city that are next in line to get signals, and does this not even come close because it doesn't have the traffic count? But that idea. So I just thought those were issues that had come up regarding traffic and transportation, whatever, our road system over the last couple weeks, and I thought I'd raise them.
Thank you. And maybe you can send us all a memo or something on that. That would be great.
Can I
and a couple
add
maybe raise
to
at a meeting
them?
just to give education to people.
Sure. Did you have a couple others?
Well, yeah, there's one other place that I've heard repeated, I should have thought to round it up before, is the area going out of Hennepin Tech onto Flying Cloud Drive, that students often wait 2, 3, 4 minutes to be able to turn out of there. I have tried to make turns in there myself, and it's timed against that whole Hennepin Tech area, and it probably shouldn't be. And I've got a second that Preserve Boulevard going down in Anderson Lakes, it was actually much safer before the light went in and faster, because so many people are turning funny through that you take your life in your hands driving through it. And I would never send a child through the crosswalk across the way to that school, because that intersection is so dangerous. I've almost seen kids run over at times. Luckily, there's been no super accidents, but most of the neighborhood finds alternate ways rather than going through that intersection, because it is quite dangerous.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Getchell, you have a report.
I do, Mayor. Thank you. I'd like to give an update on the Community Conversations League of Minnesota Cities piece. And if you recall, it was about a year ago at this time, the council applied to be one of 12 cities in the state to host a series of conversations about the future of funding and the future of city funding and city services. And there's been a lot of discussion about the new normal economic environment that we're in, and our League of Minnesota Cities does a good job of educating and advocating on behalf of cities, and we thought this would be a good citizen engagement tool. I think the unfortunate part was when we were applying to be a city to take part in that series, we thought that it would be much more localized. We thought there would be a series of conversations more specific to just the city of Eden Prairie, and I know that they were at that time just planning the series, and we found out later on that they had a very set plan for the series across the state to be uniform and to be statewide. And obviously the feedback that they would receive in Eden Prairie might be different than what they received in Duluth or in Albert Lee. Obviously it might change by the region. So that being said, it's still a good engagement tool, and we had our Rotary clubs and our senior center and some other organizations and members of the faith community host and be a part of the 3 conversations that we had. And now there's an event on Monday, April 30th in the evening where they'd like to come back into our community and summarize the results. And I think they're going out of their way to invite the people that they know that participated previously. But you may recall that city staff, elected officials, and others were actually asked not to participate in the previous sessions. I know Ricky Sajak tried to get into one of the sessions, but we are invited to this session. So staff and council are invited to attend this kind of wrap-up, thank you celebration, and there'll be a summary of findings on the previous conversations, and I don't know yet, hopefully it can be specific to what we heard in Eden Prairie and not only the state. And we do plan on having more forums and conversations, and we've had town hall meetings, a town hall meeting, we have another in May, and hopefully we'll have more specific conversations in our community. But it ended up being a good event for the league and the state and the city, and so if people are welcome to attend on Monday, April 30th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the community center for this event, and ask that you call the city manager's office if you do plan on attending. I think they want an idea of what the count is, and they might actually have some light refreshments, but that would be 952-949-8410.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lotthammer. A donation.
Yes, Your Honor, council members. We had the fortunate experience of Stan Tikla, who's our outdoor center supervisor, speaking at the Lions Club event in December. He was their main speaker and provided some information and entertainment to them. As a part of their event, they had a meat raffle where they raised some money, and they elected to then donate that towards the Starring Lake Outdoor Center, $247. And so we have specified that to go towards astronomy equipment to help continue to offer those programs at the outdoor center. And that's what we're asking for tonight, is to accept the donation from the Lions Club. We have sent them a letter of thank you, and I've talked to several of them in person to let them know how much we appreciate it. And they are an organization that obviously helps the community, but also helps us a great deal with some city functions as well as donations that we've been fortunate enough to get through the Parks and Recreation Department.
Thank you. Yes, they've been great community supporters. Does anybody want to make the motion for acceptance?
I would move to accept the donation in the amount of $247 from the Eden Prairie Lions Club for astronomy equipment at the Eden Prairie Outdoor Center.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.